So I'll give you a few minutes. I don't usually get to do a lot of these with school now starting, but this time I wanted to talk to you about fear and how it can be very debilitating, and also the pathway of fear and how it can lead to dictatorships. One of the components of fear, one of the strongest components of fear, is hiding itself inside secrecy. Fear, secret, whether it's the secret societies or secret movements behind closed doors, things that are hidden from people's views with private contracts of hotels, or where global leaders are meeting together. Things like this have created this secrecy that is necessary for fear to exist. And this isn't anything new. A lot of times, if you look in the history of our world, you're going to see the pathway of dictatorship started not as a vibrant thing, but something that started out in secrecy, where it was a subtle thing, where it came upon somebody like a thief in the night, where you have your shadows and you have your illusions and you have your smoke and you have your mirrors, all the things that are necessary to obscure exactly what's going on. And an emotional component that is in spread of hopelessness, of loss of power, of telling people they have no rights, of telling people they can't do anything about it to fix the system. All of these things are the necessary elements that are needed in order to create a fear-based society. And it's not anything new. If you study history, you will see many countries have employed this fear-based agenda in order to change the entire structure of a government system or the nation in and of itself. But when we start slowly adding a little light to the problem, when we start not allowing fear to rule over us, when we say and we understand exactly what our rights are, exactly what the laws are, the fact that our leaders are our peers who are holding temporary power positions that we gave them the authority to have. When we understand that we have no rulers in the United States of America, when we understand that there are no kings or lordships or feudal systems in the United States of America, when we understand that we do not kick anybody out of the United States of America for what they believe in, whether it's supporting one ideology or another. One of the beautiful things about freedom, and one of the necessary components about freedom, is the fact that you need to be able to have tolerance for freedom to exist. It is that intolerant state that is the pathway of fear, where people start attacking each other and trying to kick each other out of the country. These things are not the environment of the United States of America. We do not kick anybody out of our country for what they believe in. We do not kick anybody out of the country for what religious philosophies they believe in. We do not kick anybody out of the country based on whether they're left or right or in the middle or just don't give a crap. We do not kick anybody out of the United States of America for their beliefs. And when we start doing that, when we start doing that ideology of kicking people out of the nation for what they believe in, for not standing for the flag, for not doing an anthem, when we turn flags and anthems and songs into idols, these are the pathways and tools of dictatorship. And it's subtle. It's not anything that's going to happen automatically. These are subtle things that hide within the shadows, where they start imbuing this idea of distrust, of this anti-country, that people who believe these things must be this ism. Isms are a very strong component whenever you're dealing with destructions of nations or destructions of government. Isms are stereotypes that people claim that an entire government structure is going to end up this way because the leader of that ism acted that way. Governments are nothing more than a civilized society of a population of people who are governed by a set of rules. Without rules, we have chaos. And we can see these social experiments that have been done on reality TV on shows such as Survivor or Naked and Not Afraid, where people are put into deserted islands and given no rules. anything goes, just win. And we have seen how they have divided themselves into these little societal hierarchies where a leader arrives and the rest must follow the leader, and those that do not get kicked out of that tribe. We see these things that reality TV has actually shown us in these survival type programs where we are not able to rule without laws. We cannot govern without laws. We end up kicking our own teammates out of our group in order to win. Capitalism, pure capitalism, is winning. It's not about caring about a worker. It's not about caring about the environment of a community. It's not caring about how the product is made, but how cheap that product is made, so more money can go back into the company that then goes into the shareholders' wallets who support that company. And we find that throughout this exploitation of workers, whether it's any kind of system that you set up, whether it's the illegal kind of slavery, or whether it's through a abuse of a nonprofit system where free labor is then justified as volunteer for things that are not really adding to the benefit of our nation, but creating an idea of division and distrust and putting teammates against each other in order to win. When these things happen, we need to be very aware that what we're experiencing is a fear-based agenda that can destroy our nation. And it's, again, this is nothing new. We can look at Germany 1934 as a great example, where we have, and a lot of times it's going to be using some kind of religious ideology that's going to come up into power and justify all the things that are happening and saying this country is based on this philosophy. But the United States of America is not a Judeo-Christian nation. We are not a religious-based nation. We are freedom to worship anyone you want or no one at all. And so one of the real big factors of Ivy, go away. I'm recording. Go away. Okay. One of the big factors of Nazi Germany was the fact that they used Christianity in order to destroy Germany. The Article 24 of the 1920 Nazi Party platform read as follows: "We demand the freedom of all religious confessions in the state insofar as they do not jeopardize the state's existence or conflict with the manners and moral sentiments of the Germanic race." This is almost like an idea of a race-based society, a singular race society, whether it's a white race or any kind of race that you want to put into that blank. The party as such upholds the point of view of a positive Christianity without tying itself confessionally to any one confession. Well, the whole entire Christian faith is based on the idea and the instructions and the teachings of Christ. And so by saying that they're not going to hold themselves confessionally, forgiveness, confessing of sins, they're not going to hold themselves confessionally to this idea. They're just going to create this illusion of a positive Christianity. It combats the Jewish materialistic spirit at home and abroad and is convinced that a permanent recovery of our people can only be achieved from within on the basis of common good before individual good. At this time, they were attacking the Jews and saying, Christians, if you want to create this Christian-based nation, you need to get rid of the Jews. Today, we're seeing that done with other religious groups, whether it's Muslims or even people that are not even in the religious ideologies, a religious group in and of themselves, but that go against this concept of the spiritual text that they're nitpicking and saying such things as homosexuals are an abomination of God. And in fact, in Nazi Germany, they did that exact same thing where they accused homosexuals of being an abomination of God. Despite the open anti-Semitism of the statement and its linkage between confessional freedom and a nationalistic, radicalized understanding of mortality, many Christians in Germany at the time read this as an affirmation of Christian values. We are starting to see these patterns repeat again and again and again. And it goes as far back as ancient Chinese, whenever the purists, the Confucius, created this same stigma of Puritanism, this purist thing, where an expectation of perfection. Whether it's Senator McConnell who's saying, oh, well, the founding fathers meant to make the United States of America based on the 10 commandments of God. Something of perfection that not even the person who was given the 10 commandments could uphold. Every person in that Bible broke one of those laws, and yet we have people as part of the James Madison Center of Free Speech who said that the United States of America's laws are based on the 10 commandments, the perfection standard of God. We are not perfect, and those who are on these pedestals and preaching and condemning others are not perfect either, and they need to realize that, because they're breaking one of the biggest things God says not to do, is judging people for sin. We do not have that authority. We were not given any kind of authority to judge anybody for their sin, because there was nothing that we did to earn any kind of benefit or forgiveness of sin except accepting a gift, a free gift. And if you're going to coerce people into forcing the salvation idea on them, you remove the whole entire aspect of salvation being a free gift. And those who are so anti-socialist because you're not liking anything that's free, keep that in mind, because salvation in and of itself is free. And so we are freeloading on God when we accept that salvation, that gift that we do not deserve to have. These are the dictatorship pathways that allow fear to fester into people's hearts, where they attack the people of their nation under this religious banner of God and saying God justified these violence against them. We are making a complete mockery of salvation when we do that, when we claim to be these armies of God to attack the people and bring justice upon their sins, because there was nothing we did to earn our own salvation. When we understand these simple thoughts and simple ideas and simple facts of the Christian religion, then we are no longer going to be consumed by fear. The grip of fear on our hearts will go away. Plato said that, I can't remember what discourse it was, but he told his students that when they no longer fear death, then there is nothing that anybody can hold over them anymore. One of the greatest fears that the entire world has is the fear of dying. And the dictators capitalize on that fear with their mercenaries and their armies and their self-created political soldiers who are enslaved to this idea of fear, and that they have been given authority of God to be the justice bearers of the world. Dictators use these things to manipulate the soldiers into attacking their own people. When we realize that fear no longer has any hold over us, then dictators cannot use these things to manipulate our minds and our hearts to go after our own people anymore. And when we realize that, the pathway of dictatorship falls. And the more light we shine, just these simple truths, these simple ideas of our religious beliefs, when the faithful come forward and say, wait a minute, this is a complete mockery of everything that I believe in. When patriots come forward and they say, wait a minute, the United States of America, we don't kick people out of our country for what they believe in. When the people who have actually studied the U.S. Constitution says, wait a minute, they're breaking all these constitutional laws and no one is saying anything about it. They're actually justifying it and saying basically that the president is the king. When these things happen and no one speaks up because they're too scared of dying, the nations will fall. And of course, you may look at it and say, well, what's one voice? What's one voice of a whole army of people? They have far more wealth than I do, and far more power than I do, and far more authority than I do, and far more prestige than I do. What is one voice? And we can look at history and see the power of that one voice in changing the entire course of nations. Just one voice. Whether it's Martin Luther nailing up the edicts on the church's door that says, God will no longer be used to oppress people. I am not going to follow your way. Or whether it's John the Baptist who's crying in the wilderness, of this idea of the Savior who's going to come. Or whether it's Martin Luther King Jr., who decided, also a pastor, who decided that the oppression of the United States was not meant to be that way if we are going to be a nation of, for, and by the people. We cannot oppress citizens inside the United States and maintain that simple idea of freedom. One person standing for what is truth, justice, and righteousness, and not using God in order to justify violence and war can be very powerful in changing not only nations, but in changing the entire world. There was a song that they used to sing, one of the Baptist groups. I grew up Baptist, and so that's how I can really recognize a lot of things that are happening, because this is the society that I grew up in as a child. This idea of perfectionism, that you're perfect and everybody else is the sinner, and you are justified in pointing out those sins. This is what I grew up under. And so seeing this now as a national standard is very disturbing, because again, the United States is not a religious-based nation. We are a nation of freedom. And if we're going to be a nation of freedom, we have to allow everybody to have their own ideas and not kick anyone out of the country or put them in jail or threaten them with a death penalty just because they don't believe everything that you believe, or just because they won't hail you as king of the United States of America. We do not do these things because we are Americans, and the United States of America is a nation of freedom that is governed by the people. We elect our peers into power. We put them into temporary power. Congress has 2 years of temporary power, and then we decide if we're going to continue that power. Presidents have 4 years of power. Then we decide if we're going to continue that power, and then they're limited to 8. It is a temporary power for a peer that we have placed with tremendous responsibility in taking care of the affairs of the entire nation as a whole. Maybe the best solution for us is to get rid of the whole entire party system altogether, because it turned us into sports teams. My team is going to win. No, my team is going to win. And we just went into this fanaticism of this sports team craze, where we no longer are looking at the game, the field, the people who are playing on the field, the mechanics of the game. We're no longer paying attention to that. We're so distracted by the audience and yelling at each other that we're no longer even noticing everything that's going on right in front of us. Maybe if we got rid of our party system, we would no longer be that way. Maybe if we got rid of our party system, the people, the United States of American people, doesn't matter what religion you believe, doesn't matter what race you are, doesn't matter where you came from. If you're a citizen of the United States, you're covered. Maybe if we got rid of that party system, we would then not be so vulnerable to foreign government leaders who seep in the shadows of the night, who over periods of 70 years end up manipulating our entire government structure, end up placing their own people into power, end up corrupting the government systems with these greed-based agendas, and says, if you do this, you're going to be wealthy and powerful and the most prominent person in the entire world. Maybe if we got rid of the party structure, it would be about the people again. I support, and we all should support, our whistleblowers. They're the one voice that's crying out in that wilderness, and they're not getting our support right now. And instead, we have people who have been yelling from their self-bought stages, often funded by their donors who are reimbursed by the government taxpayers, us, to turn us against our own whistleblowers, the ones who are standing up for justice and rule of law and for order and law and order. And they're hiding the fact that they're doing this by claiming to be for law and order. But when you look at their actions and you ignore the emotional crap, you're going to see the actions do not fit with what they're saying. The actions and the product of the actions and the consequences that we are seeing of those actions do not fit the marketing slogans that they are telling us from those stages, the hype and the razzle and the spectacle that they're performing on those stages. So I'm going to end with this simple little song. And forgive me, I haven't sang in a while, so, I don't know how it's going to turn out. But sometimes, music can have a powerful effect in reaching across the world. One voice crying in the wilderness, one voice proclaiming righteousness, one voice doing what no other one would do, one voice faithful and true. And so if you can use that for your hope and your inspiration in order to be that one voice, doesn't matter whether you have support or not. If you see it, say it. If you know the rule of law, say it. If you see something that's being broken by our government leaders, say it, and keep saying it. And our collective voices, the more we say it, the more we bring it forward, the more we demand justice at the top of our government systems, the more we say this does not make any sense, and why is there money laundering happening here, and why are the agencies that are supposed to be taking care of this money laundering scandals getting defunded? Tell me that. Tell me why these things are happening, because I want to know. This is not my nation, and I deserve to know the answers. When we do that, we will get our nation back. And this can happen all over the world. We're finding a pattern that's happening all over the world, and they all have the same thing in common. And if we track those money trails, if we track the Petro One gold that's planning on taking into effect, I think, September 16th, we will see these investment deals and the summits and the things that hid inside the shadows all have something in common. And all the global tours of our leaders, where they claimed it was political based or gathering political dirt, was really conniving and using our own military resources to force nations into complying with these investment structures that will end up hurting each citizen of that nation just so the government leader can prosper personally off the glory and the fame that was promised. When we are willing to do this as an entire world, we will see a different world. And all these Armageddon claims that are going on, we'll find out that this is nothing more than religious smoke and mirrors to justify violence and this nationalism idea that is not the United States of America. We do not kick anybody out of our country for what they believe in.